Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. After a wild bachelorette party, a group of young women find themselves trapped in an underground bunker complex. A disturbing finding turns their night into an absolute nightmare. Will they be able to escape from their vast concrete maze? Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Underground. All right, Luke. Well, it is January, and we are just coming off of Night Swim, which was not great. We didn't really love that one, and it seems like a lot of people are sharing that sentiment with us. But let's be honest here: the last couple Januaries have been pretty good to us. We've had some nice ups, and honestly, some big surprises. So I was pretty excited when we got our monthly notice from Screambox and them letting us know what was going to be on there. And this one being found footage, and you know how fondly I've come around to found footage recently. This one caught my attention, so I had requested that screener. I think before I even mentioned it to you, just because the concept here is very interesting. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is the directorial debut of Lars Jansen. And yes, he's known for doing some short films. He's done a number of them, consisting of a couple of them here. I think you said that Underground was one of them when we spoke there, Luke.
I
Yeah.
thought so.
Yes, and then he's also known for one called Blue Blood and Backstage. But this is his directorial debut, as stated. This is very low budget. They put this together. He is based out of the UK, and that's very much where this film takes place. It takes place in the United Kingdom, and all the cards are there for it to be kind of an interesting concept. But Luke, give me your first impressions here of Underground.
Well, I wasn't. I was somewhere in the middle. For this one initially, we did our best of 2023, and The Outwaters was pretty high on my list. And I was very hesitant to get into any sort of found footage. But after that, I would say after The Outwaters, I'm being swayed toward found footage and seeing a lot of potential there. So I did read that little synopsis prior to going into this. Didn't see a trailer or anything like that. So I was interested to see how they were going to make this one feel organic and the usage of that found footage, because yes, this is pretty low budget, but when you go found footage, that is pretty budget friendly. So it's not really gonna you're not going to pick it out saying, "Oh, this seems low budget," because that's nature of the beast with found footage. So, going into this one, I don't know. It seemed like not much happened for me. I was having some trouble really finding my groove in this one, and kind of getting those wheels turning and me really catching my interest. And I kept every 10 minutes I kept going, it's probably going to start. We're going to start moving now, and then by the time the credits were rolling, I was still in that, oh, maybe it's going to get rolling. So for me, this one didn't really hit.
Yeah, I have to second that with you here, man. This was definitely another film, and it's just tough for me to sit here and, go from seeing Night Swim, which I thought was very unfocused and, was very, just took a while to get things going and generally just pretty boring, to this, where I was like, okay, we're going to get Screambox. Normally they do a great job with their picks and everything. And, I still think they're great. And I mean, I think that it's great that they took a chance on this film because, yeah, we got to support indie film, got to support indie horror. But yeah, this one, man, I just feel like this is the definition of we're just picking up a camera and making it up as we go along. Because I think that they probably had a really cool location, which they did. I will say the underground maze museum type thing that we're dealing with here, it is interesting looking. But we never get a full solid like definition of what exactly is going on, and I'm not saying that from like an ambiguous standpoint. I'm saying that from a things are just happening, shit's just being thrown at the wall, and we're not even really here to see what sticks. We're really just like, this is going to happen, and then we're going to move on from it, and then we're going to come back to this, and we're going to act like nothing happened. And there's a distinct lack of consequence in this film too, which just makes this kind of a very strange journey with a very unsatisfying ending.
Yes, and going into this one, and when we look at something like the Outwaters, I'll bring up again, where I think found footage has the luxury of being able to tell a story maybe a little more unfocused than a straight narrative,
Hmm.
where you can turn a camera off, turn it back on, and we can have a passage of time that doesn't necessarily make sense, as long as you kind of have those strong, at least a few strong points to tie the story together. I think the Outwaters does it where it's like, we have a passage of time. Some things don't necessarily make sense but for that found footage, and there's some strong narrative points in there that can make it a viable experience. Whereas this one, I think it's void of those points where we're just kind of pointing a camera and, we're listening to these characters speak. And that's where, the Outwaters, yes, appear in my top 10. So maybe I'm comparing it unfairly, but we can even go into another, I believe it's a Screambox original subject. And that
Yeah.
one, when we look at these found footage films, I'm always looking for that creativity of how do we make this found footage feel organic. And I think something like the Outwaters did it successfully. I think Subject did it successfully. Where this one, it felt really weird to me. There was a time where I was kind of getting into a groove of, oh, I feel like part of the group. And there's a point in here for me that sticks out like a real sore thumb. And I'm like, okay, I'm watching a movie. And it takes place about 20 minutes into the film. It's nothing that's heavy into the story or anything. It's just where they put this weird stock disco music, it seems like, to when they're partying in a club. And it really just feels out of place. And I'm like, okay, they really just they pulled me out of this group dynamic, and they're reminding me that I'm watching this group.
Yeah, and I think like, a lot of people criticize found footage films for using scores and things like that. And I think you can get away with it, but you have to make sure that it's subtle. You have to make sure that it's only very sparingly used. It's even better if you can incorporate it into the film itself. So like say they find a creepy music box and that's your kind of song that plays through it. But like this, yeah, they're just using music. They're just putting, like you said, a cheap like kind of royalty free disco track at one point, and then like towards the end they do it again with like these really creepy scary music, and it's just like, to what end? Because by the time, like, not to get into spoilers, but by the time that concludes, I just sat there, was like, what was the point of any of this? Like, not like, we're devoid of consequences, we're devoid of anything really scary. It's a lot of people, oh god, scary darkness, now we're going to sit here and we're going to talk for a while, we're going to get through this, and then we're going to do this random, like, I can't say without spoiling it, but like this random thing to conjure up something, and then it's going to show up, and then suddenly we're all going to be able to leave. It's like, what? Like, I just, it's just one of those movies that had me shaking my head around every corner. And really, I think that it is just very, very lacking in the script department, very lacking in just the idea. Again, it just feels so much like we just got to make a found footage film to make a found footage film. All of the points that they try to hit on are very disjointed. There is one element here that I actually got really interested in, because there's a lot of hearkening to World War II and the Nazis. And then there's one point where something happens and you're like, oh, this is what we're going with. We're going to have this. Is like, this is kind of cool. This is different. But it's gone in a flash and then they never go back to it. And it's like, why? Like, I didn't get it. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that we're just not the audience for this. But yeah, I just found myself being very, very detached and just trying to finish this just to have it in our backlog and do this review. And I hate when I feel that way. That's what makes this feel like work. And that sucked. So for me, I have nothing else to say on this, but I'm just going to say this is a slash it for me.
Yeah, and when we're looking at things like this, I'm when you're smaller budgeted, I'm not necessarily looking for a lot of great special effects, anything like that. I just want this kind of basic story that is going to be lean into those horror elements. And I will say, this one, when I was going through this saying, oh, after 10 minutes, it's gonna start getting going here at some point. I was waiting for those elements of horror, and there's only really one element in here, and only lasts for a very, very brief moment. And like you said, they don't really touch on it again. It really is just the story of this bachelorette party group in this kind of World War II bunker. And I think with that World War II lore, you could have really opened this up and really made it really interesting and this claustrophobic feel, but you really don't get that. And I will say, from an audio perspective, I did have some trouble in terms of the echoey feeling of this, where I really had to kind of go back and try and listen to what some of the characters were saying. So, for me, it was really hard to understand their points, even some of the camaraderie that they were trying to convey on screen, because it was really hard for me to hear. So for me, this one had a lot of negatives to it. There weren't really any positives that I could really take away from this film. It's going to be filed back into something that I watched in the start of 2024, and I'll probably forget about it. So yes, this one for me is a slash it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, guys. We're 2 slash hits into 2024. Hopefully, we can get something that'll turn it around soon. But yeah, let us know if you guys are checking out Underground on Screambox. Of course, if you guys are not subscribed to Screambox, what are you doing? There's so many great properties on there, so many great films. This one didn't work for us, but that doesn't mean that it may not work for you. So if you're interested in this film, I still recommend checking it out, supporting the streaming service. This is honestly a rare slash it for us. Like we hardly ever give Screambox that rating. They are very consistent. So, but everybody loses once in a while. So, but for me, that's all I got to say about Underground. Luke, that's pretty much everything you got. I mean, I again, I will probably forget about this movie by the time we get around to our top tens. It was just that disfocused. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.